Hi everyone, Helen Blunden here at Activate Learn on Twitter. It is time for another book review, and this time round you see me here. I've just come back from my morning walk, threw a bit of lippy on, thought I'm just going to do the book review as is. So here I am with my COVID hair, under lockdown, still in Melbourne. Now this time round this book has been really interesting for me. I've been thinking about it a lot, especially as here in Melbourne we are in lockdown. And as I was reading this book, I was also thinking a lot about Julian Assange. But that's another matter. Let's go on with talking about the book. Now, as you can see, I haven't got the book in my hands. I bought it as a Kindle book, and I should have bought it as a physical book because it's a book that I would love to have on my shelf and I would love to read it again. Not that I can't read it on Kindle, but, you know, I want the physical book sometimes. So the book is Amor Towles A Gentleman in Moscow. Now, it's not a new book. It's been around for some years and it's been on the bestseller list. And in fact, I would hazard a guess that you've probably already heard about it or have heard that they're already also making a series out of it, which is going to be very interesting and that I'm going to be looking out for. So what is the book about? The book is about one of the last, I guess, remaining people of Tsarist Russia. He's a count, he's an aristocrat, and his name is Count Ilyich Alexander Rostov. I think I got that right. Anyway, he writes this poem, and this poem is considered by the Bolsheviks as being it can incite the public to action of some sort, and they didn't want that. They didn't want poetry or words actually stir up the populace at this time. So rather than put him into jail, they put him into the Metropole Hotel under house arrest, and they basically said, you're not to leave or else we will kill you. And so this whole story is about his life, 32 years in the Metropole Hotel. Now, when you think about Metropole Hotel, think about a hotel in your city that is very opulent, that is a sign of, say, a century past, of times past, of richer, more wonderful times. This was the Metropole. It's kind of like the Ritz of Moscow. And the hotel itself seemed to be like a character in the book. It was, to me, I felt it was personified a time and a place that was of a history long past. And it's within and surrounded by a world that is constantly changing, and in a city and a country that was becoming and overcame with the communist ideal. So I kind of think of it like black and white, with a burst of colour and wonder and opportunity in the middle of the Metropole Hotel. And so the Count lives in this. So he dines, he's a very aristocratic person, he's well versed in education, history, music, Russian art, literature, he speaks well, he's always interested in his surroundings, he's always interested to learn more about the people that come and visit and the people who stay at the hotel. And you could see he's a man of punctuality, and he's got his routine set up so that every day is pretty much the same, but he's able to kind of make do with his situation. Now, the book itself is also about the characters that come into his life. At the start of the book, he tries to commit suicide. I think he realizes the enormous, pressure of staying in a very small room. But he also creates a little secret room, which is wonderful. And he tries to commit suicide because he doesn't see him getting out of the situation anytime soon. But he's saved by a friend of his. Now, throughout the book, we also are introduced to a couple of young girls, and this is one of the other aspects of the book that I loved, about the intergenerational relationship of the Count with these young girls. The first girl was Nina, and Nina was this precocious 9-year-old. She was the daughter of a Russian official, and she was bored because her father would leave her for hours at a time, but she found ways to amuse herself. And so they strike up a friendship, and she gives the Count this key card, this card that kind of like well, not maybe a key card, it could be just a key, I don't know. Anyway, an all access pass to all levels of the hotel, to all parts of the hotel that are considered secret or not seen by the public. And they go on an exploratory journey. So they discover new rooms, they discover the basement, they discover places and people that they hadn't seen before. Now this opens up the Count's eyes. All of a sudden, where the four walls were closing in on him, he finally realized that he's within a whole microcosm of a world, and it's up to him to kind of find the adventures and find the people, the characters, the history, and the things to do within these four walls. And he certainly finds it with that pass, which certainly helps him throughout his adventures. Now, Nina grows up and she gets married and she has a child of her own, and she becomes one of these communist officials. And at one stage we see her come back to the hotel with her young daughter Sophia, because she needs to go and find her husband, who has been taken by the Russian officials, probably in Siberia somewhere. And she tells the Count to look after young Sophia and that she'll be back to take her. But we don't see Nina anymore, and in actual fact, young Sophia is completely different from her mother, and she puts, I guess, the spanner in the works, because the Count is very punctual, he's very routine orientated, he's got a schedule, and all of a sudden he's got this young kid who he has to deal with. And people around the hotel, the other waiters, the people that he befriends, are always giving him advice, and they also take her under their wing as well, so that she becomes part of the family. And we find out that young Sophia has a talent as she grows. She's an excellent pianist, and she gets invited to actually play the piano in Paris. But she can't, well, she can leave the hotel, but unfortunately the Count can't. And so there's a storyline there which I won't divulge, because that is the main storyline. But throughout this whole book, there's a whole heap of themes. Now, the first thing that I would say is the hotel itself, which is a microcosm of a time past in a world that is constantly changing. And I keep thinking of that revolving door to the Metropole Hotel. And in the revolving door, people come through that actually bring a little bit of the outside in and tell the Count what is happening with regards to the life outside. So he lives in a bubble, and as people come into the hotel, we get snippets of history happening throughout the story, and indeed all the chapters are pretty much the years that have gone by. So we get the story about Russian history, although we don't get it fully. It's not oppressive in any way. In actual fact, it's really interesting to get these glimpses of how Russian history had happened, the different ways that the officials would meet at the Metropole Hotel, and the hierarchy of their meetings was very interesting to read. So that's one theme. Another theme I got about being able to kind of make your world bigger than it is. Now, as I sat back here, I mean, I'm in lockdown here. Melbourne has been in lockdown for a very long time, and we're at a point where we're really frustrated with the strict conditions. We have a curfew. We can't go out of our homes past 9 o'clock now, till early in the morning. All our cafes and restaurants are shut except for takeaway. We can only go outside our home for 2 hours, and even those 2 hours are not consecutive. And we're constrained within 5 kilometres of our home. So as I was reading this book, I was thinking about my own situation, and I thought, where I thought the 5 kilometres was actually quite limiting for me, if I could take a lesson out of this book from the Count and actually consider what are the things within my 5 kilometres that I value. And it is the parks that are nearby, the streets that I could go down, the different houses that I could see, the different gardens in the houses and how people have set up their gardens, the different people who I meet at the park who I could chat with even though they're masked, the different little things that I see on the road, the birds, the animals, the dogs that I could pet that come by and just say hello. So all of a sudden, reading A Gentleman in Moscow for me while in lockdown in Melbourne actually took on a completely different form. Well, I'm not in lockdown for 32 years. I'm in my home. I'm relatively safe. Same as the Count. He was in the hotel, but he couldn't get out of the hotel. So he made every best effort to make his world come to him in different ways. And maybe that's what I have had to do with lockdown as well. As well as that, I had been thinking about Julian Assange at this time and thinking about him cooped up all this time, all these years in the one room in this embassy. And so it got me thinking about how do people actually make their situation a little bit more bearable and acceptable, knowing that they are still constrained in some way. What are some ways they could have at least their mindset freed up, and so that they view each day and each action and each person that they come across in the day as a wonderful experience. The other thing I loved was the intergenerational relationships. So we see all the different relationships between this older man and these young girls, and these young girls were just wonderful. The language in the book is, again, wonderful. It is beautiful. If you're someone who appreciates taking time to read something that you don't, this is not a book for people who just want to skim through and go, what's the point? Because at times I felt, where was this going? Where was this story going? And it was slowly unfolding. And I thought to myself, I've just got to appreciate the language, how it's written, and the time it takes. Because the Count himself wasn't a person who would rush to things. He wasn't a busy man. So then I thought, it's exactly what we're doing here in life. Why are we rushing around being busy? For what? Why aren't we appreciating what life gives us? And why aren't we appreciating our life around us? And so there was this element of kind of like a slow unfolding. It's a slow read. It's a slow read, but it's a nice, beautiful read because the language is just stunning. And it evokes a whole heap of different emotions and a different instances that come out. The hotel itself could be a character too. It inspired me so much that I looked into the Metropole Hotel, and sure enough, there are tours that you can do there. You could be taken around to the various rooms that the Count habited and visited. You could see the different places that he dined at. You could see the fountain. And it is such a, well, it's one thing. Yes, I would like to travel to Russia one day, so the Metropole Hotel would be definitely a place to visit. So would I recommend A Gentleman in Moscow? For sure, I will and would recommend it. It is a beautiful book. It is a wonderful book. It is a book for anyone who appreciates fine art, dining, music, literature, poetry, history, people, stories, life, friendship, but life. Anyway, that's it for me for now. If you have read A Gentleman in Moscow, tell me what you thought about it. What did you like? What didn't you like? Let me know, and on to the next book now. Bye for now.